Thank you.
Okay, just state your name.
Patty Berry from Ka'u. Welcome. Thank you for allowing me to testify. I'm testifying as a Ka'u community member and a member of the CDP. Additional information has been brought to my attention regarding the property under the original charter, which was designated as Village Commercial at the entrance to Discovery Harbor. That is Lot 824 and Lot 515. You're talking about a 12-acre parcel and a 15-acre parcel. And if I may, I can show you something that will let you see what I'm talking about. This, I'm talking about the 12
I think you need to stay by your microphone, but we do have that handout.
I'm going to hold it up here so you can see it. I don't know if you can all see it. That's the entrance to Discovery Harbor. And we're talking about a 12-acre parcel and a 15-acre parcel, which is just left dormant at this time. All the lots have been subdivided out to be sold individually. So you have around 815 lots that are already here designed, and we are, with homes, we're only about a third built out. Most of the lots that are left in here, many of them just have scrub brush on them and lots of Christmas berries. We're selling them in an orderly manner, so many per year. But this was a development that was developed around 1972, and I do have a little thing I can pass out later for you to see, which was put out in 1972. This was going to be a Four Seasons Hawaiian resort. It was very upscale. Right now, what we're talking about is going back into what the charter had designed, which would have been a village commercial rather than what the CDP has come up with, which was a down zoning. There was some conflict with the HOA when the CDP did have their meeting and we didn't have all the information. So I'm trying to bring this to your attention now. This Discovery Harbor Homeowners Association Insurance Council did send a statement that the HOA will not object to village commercial zoning, and I have a copy of that I've attached to my testimony here.
You have 30 seconds.
Okay. The majority of the residents in Discovery Harbor seem to be in favor of the village commercial. This will also allow the golf course to be commercially maintained. Right now it is being maintained by volunteers who live in Discovery Harbor, but are limited to what they can do because the liability is tremendous by having volunteers maintain an 18-hole golf course. This is an accident looking to happen. So I'd like you to revisit the Discovery Harbor portion of the CDP.
Thank you very much.
You're
And we
welcome.
did get your handouts. We all have.
Thank you.
This morning, we have Mike Matsukawa in support of Bill 52.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Good morning, Chair and members of the council. I already submitted written testimony, so I won't repeat it. Much has been said about the Missler case in past hearings, and I was the attorney who was involved in the Missler case, so if there are further questions concerning the case itself, I can be available to answer those questions. The other thing is, what did the Missler case stand for? And in my testimony, I outlined 7 points. I think the third point is the most, the item of most attention, which was the land use portion of the Kona CDP ordinance. But that ordinance is unique to the Kona ordinance and is definitely separate and different from the Ka'u ordinance that you're looking at today. So I wouldn't be worried about that item. But one of the most important things I believe is that the court reemphasized the county's obligation to execute what we call the Public Natural Resources Trust, which is what the Ka'u bill purports to do, to its credit. The Supreme Court of the state since 2006 has directed the county and its officials to enforce this constitutional trust. Very little has happened, and so the court's opinion is very helpful. And I need to remind the council that in 2010, voters of the County of Hawaii adopted Section 1329 to the county charter to make this obligation a county obligation as well. So thank you. I'll be available if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Here in Hilo, John Cross and Megan Lamson, can you please come forward? Go ahead, Mr. Cross. Just state your name and begin your testimony.
My name is John Cross. I am a member of the steering committee, the Ka'u Community Development Plan. I represent, or my position on the committee was I represent large landowners. And we have spent a good, close to 10 years developing this community development plan. In and of the plan itself, it's fantastic. It's great. I like it. The only issue that I am commenting on is what Mike just mentioned. It's the application of the Misler case to the Ka'u Community Development Plan. Well, they're two separate documents, and it's been very well known that the Ka'u plan is a recommending document. It is not a regulatory document. It recommends to the decision makers what the community wants to see. So the general plan, the county code, the rules, the planning director, county council, they make the decisions. The CDP does not. It only recommends. That is my comment.
Thank you.
Aloha kakahiaka, Chair Eoff and other members of the committee. My name is Megan Lamson, and I'm a marine biologist. I have a master's in science from the University of Hawaii here in Hilo. And I'm here today in very strong support of the Ka'u CDP and Bill 52. When I moved to this island 12 plus years ago, I moved directly into the Ka'u district. And while I have since moved out of that area, my heart remains there. And I continue to work and I continue to play along its rocky shoreline. The quarter-mile setback is not as scary as it may seem for what is really a quarter mile but one lap around a high school track, 1,320 feet or 400 meters. But most importantly, the quarter mile is what the Ka'u community wants, and it would help ensure healthy coral reef and coastal ecosystems and public access into the future. As you know, Ka'u is home to many strong, loving, and amazing people. However, it's also home to over 200 species of native plants and animals. Along its shores are the most successful hawksbill sea turtle nesting beaches in the state. Along its shores, endangered Hawaiian monk seals haul out to give birth to their pups. Along its rocky shores, the noi'o, or black naughty birds, create their breeding nests. Along its shores, the endangered Hawaiian hoary bats roost and breed in the trees. Along its shores are countless ankyline pool ecosystems that are home to unique communities of bacterial mats and native crustaceans like opai'ula, native pool shrimp. Development in close proximity to the shoreline would threaten all of these things and more. Not to mention it would limit public access in the region. Native species would suffer from coastal development as it may lead to noise pollution, light pollution, runoff, sedimentation, eutrophication or excess nutrients in our coastline, and direct destruction of coastal habitats. The Ka'u district is in the middle of 80 miles to little or no unobstructed development. It's the only place like this in the state. Once you allow coastal development in such a region, it would be nearly impossible to restore ecosystems and habitats back to their former state. All we're asking for the setback is a little buffer between buildings and the ocean and coastlines that sustain us all. For those of you not as familiar with this region, I would beg you to defer to the voice of Councilwoman Miley David. She's from this area and she understands what's best for Ka'u. I think you should have 2 votes. I rest my case in full support of the Ka'u CDP. And last but not least, I'd like to mention I will not be here tomorrow, but I still sit in full support of Bill 13 to reduce polystyrene foam food containers on this island, and I encourage each of you to read my email and online testimony for more information about that. So Thanks for your time and consideration.
Ka'u, can you please introduce your first testifier?
Nahea Ka'awa, aloha mai kako. I wanted to start off by sharing a short ka'u o lelo no'eo, and it goes ka'u lepo ula ula, meaning ka'u of the red earth. Though there are many layers of translation, Auntie Mary Kavenapuku'i noted that this olelo no'eo was said of the natives of Ka'u, who are one vast family because of pride in our people and homeland. The people of Ka'u intermarried until we were of one blood. My name is Nohea Ka'ava. I was born and raised in the Waiohinu Ahupua'a. My ohana is one of the original families of this wahipana. I also married into a family whose roots descends of this place. Together, we are raising our children in a lifestyle in which we've been fortunate enough to grow up experiencing. The land, the ocean continues to feed us. Our forest continues to give us vai. These life-giving sources exist because our kupuna knew the importance of and practiced aloha aina oia'i'o. With that said, I strongly support the proposed quarter-mile setback within the Ka'u Community Development Plan, Bill 52. This bill is a modern-day action of a traditional practice. And I will end with this quote. Today's society is defined not by what it creates, but rather what it refuses to destroy. We owe the pristine beauty of this place to the future generations of Ka'u. Mahalo nui a kako.
Thank you so much.
Aloha mai kako. My name is Pu'u Davis, also known as Barbara Davis. Mahalo nui loa for this opportunity to share my mana'o. Wouldn't it be wonderful if the sitting council members of 2017 would go down in history as a council that made the difference for Hawaii Island, Moko o Keawe? Pray tell you stand on the power to the people, not power to the council. Throughout Hawaii, the overdevelopment of our fragile coastlines reveal its sad self in the careless decision of humankind. Sewage spills have become the norm for every island, not excluding Hawaii Island. Placing of sewer treatment along our coastlines has made it of greater threat, only add to our coastline's demise. Here in beloved Ka'u, we have very limited actual sand beaches. The southeast coastline, although windy, you do not see windsurfers. Guess why? It is a very rugged, dangerous coastline where very jagged find its way to the sea. And whatever lies below are many caves that take away many lost fishermen or pihi pickers into its mouth, never to be seen or found again. Most of this area is a wonderful view. Let my eyes absorb the beauty of this rugged coastline. Let its free therapy heal my soul. Protect her with all your being. Mahalo nui loa. I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
All right. Good morning, council members. My name is Keone Fox. I'm here today in strong support of the proposed Ka'u CDP. This document is a product of our community and it reflects our district's core values. The vision of the CDP is to honor Ka'u's unique rural lifestyle, its connection between people and place, and its distinctive Hawaiian cultural heritage. The goals and policies outlined in this document are vital for achieving our community objectives. One section which is important to me is Section 4, Protect and Enhance Natural and Cultural Resources. After the closing of the plantation, many large coastal properties were sold and purchased by land developers. Of particular importance to my family are properties located Makai of Natalehu Town. My family, the Ke'anu Ohana, has ancestral connections to these lands. They are rich in both cultural and natural resources. Much of Ka'u still relies on these coastal areas for subsistence fishing and gathering. In addition to the many cultural features and remains of fishing villages, these lands are resting places for our iwi kupuna. As both a descendant and a board member of the Alakakai Trail Association, we are working with different organizations to support acquisition of these properties for preservation. Policy 22 specifically identifies coastal properties with significant recreational, cultural, and natural resources to be targeted for acquisition in public trust via fee simple or conservation easement. In regards to Policy 28, which establishes the quarter-mile shoreline setback, this language underlines the community's strong desire to limit development along the coastline in order to protect both open space and resources. At this time, there is very little development along the 80 miles of coastline in Ka'u. We have an opportunity here to protect something amazing for future generations. The people of Ka'u should be commended for being proactive and taking great efforts to plan for long-term sustainability and quality of life. It is my understanding that an attorney for 2 large landowners has voiced opposition to this policy. I'm intimately familiar with the Kavala property because the Keanu family has direct lineal ties to this land. As a recognized descendant by the Burial Council, I've been involved with efforts to limit the adverse impacts of a proposed development for many years. This policy would provide an additional layer of protection for cultural resources and public access.
You have 30 seconds.
At this moment, there are multiple large-scale subdivision applications in process. How do we protect ourselves from the urban sprawl and gated luxury estates which are now plaguing other communities on our island and displacing local residents? How do we protect our natural and cultural resources from unregulated growth, business interest, and record tourist numbers? This past July, there was a 19% increase in tourist numbers on the Big Island. Ka'u has become a hotspot for tour groups and helicopters, which put strain on our resources and infrastructure. In closing, this is a defining moment for Ka'u. This is the voice of the people, and although some of these policies may seem unconventional, I have to applaud the steering committee and the planning department for listening to the community and doing what it takes to keep Ka'u, Ka'u. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
You heard what I thought last time. No, seriously, I'm here. My name's John Replogle. I'm from Ka'u, and I am supporting the Ka'u CDP as it's presented. The big issue appears to be our quarter-mile coastal setback. And in that realm, this is what the people of Ka'u want. They want their coastline open. They're open to having the alakahakai and people hike their coastline. They're open to visitors. And I believe this land that's scheduled for development, if it were to have a quarter-mile setback, the people who might purchase there purchased it knowing that there was a quarter-mile setback to protect the coast, and they did it anyway. They would be buying into what the people of Ka'u envision for Ka'u, versus, no, I'm going to build right on the edge of the cliff, no matter what climate possibilities are coming down the pipe. And the whole state really needs to begin thinking coastal setback, because we're seeing it now in the news, what's happening, and who knows what's going to come up from the South Pacific one of these days. Down there in Ka'u, on that coastline, if you went there on the right day, say around Christmas time when it's rained, oh, you would buy the whole place. But come August and October, it's dry, hot, the wind blows forever, and people are going to go, I got to get out of here. And those developments will just be sold over and over and over. Good for realtors, but not good for the land. So step back. Let us have our quarter mile. I realize there may be legalities in it, but let's fight those battles. We need to change as humans what we do with our Aina all over the planet.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. Enough.
Thank you. Okay, the next 2 testifiers will be, or maybe I just have one more. No, 2 more. Michelle Galimba and Jerry Warren. Go ahead.
Aloha and good morning, council members. My name is Michelle Galimba. I'm a cattle rancher in Ka'u, and I'm also a member of the Ka'u Steering Committee. I'd like to ask you to please vote in favor of the Ka'u CDP. The CDP has been many years in the making, and it expresses the vision for Ka'u of the majority of the community. The CDP protects our natural resources for future generations, especially our coastline, and it supports our rural agricultural way of life and economy. As someone who makes her living in agriculture, I would like to focus my testimony on that part of the CDP. The CDP protects agricultural land by encouraging smart land use, by which I mean it preserves the towns that already exist, the plantation towns that are very high quality, walkable towns where people can get their basic needs met. So they're terrific towns, and the CDP protects those and protects against the urban sprawl that other testifiers have discussed. Nationwide, we lose 40 acres of agricultural land every hour and 1.5 million acres every year. So protecting agricultural land is a very important issue. Recent research by Kamehameha School's Bishop Estate has shown that the uplands of Ka'u were a major center of agricultural production in pre-contact times. So we do have some really important agricultural lands that need to be protected. The Ka'u CDP also addresses the need for a sustainable rural economy by advocating for a network of local businesses, small local businesses and processing facilities that will support our agricultural enterprises, such as our ranching and our award-winning Ka'u coffee. Thank you for hearing my testimony this morning, and again, please vote in favor of the Ka'u CDP.
Thank you.
I'm Jerry Warren. I drove in from Na'alehu. I'm against the Ka'u Community Development Plan for several reasons. First of all, the survey method was not professional. A professional survey picks sample households with the random number process. This CDP survey lured people in with false promises and stern warnings. The promise was that the CDP would become ordinance. The people who came in were mostly Pollyannas and nature lovers and grant grubbers and people like me who had a lot of spare time. The warning was that a citizen could not complain about the CDP if they didn't participate. Let's call this junk social science and fake authority. Keep in mind that the warning was in pidgin with a frowning smiley face for emphasis. That's when I threw all of my CDP pamphlets into the trash. Of the original 14% participating, only a few went to more meetings. Eventually, the community-minded citizens dropped out, and the business-minded people stayed in. The grant grubbers also stayed in the game. My concern has always been the county's illegal gang cesspool in Na'alehu. Here's the simple solution, paid for in 2007. I went through hell to get this. This plan was abandoned in favor of a hidden plan that would give developers free wastewater infrastructure. This is welfare for the business person. The CDP does not address this problem. Please recognize that the CDP Steering Committee leans in a business-oriented direction. Free infrastructure benefits developers and realtors selling houses. These are the people who worked very hard. They worked hard for their own self-interests. It's an age-old story. The rich get richer while the poor get poorer because we foot the bill for this bureaucracy. In summary, the money wasted on the CDP could have bought a new Halion bus that would take college students from Ocean View to the Hilo campus in time for an early morning class. The bus could have brought workers in from Pahala too. The same bus would have picked up teachers in Volcano and more people in Mountain View and Curtistown.
You have 20 seconds.
An early AM bus route would have helped Ka'u and Puna. The CDP does nothing. Mahalo.
Thank you.
The CDP program is established by the county's general plan to create a framework for residents and other stakeholders to participate in regional planning for their communities. The planning area for the Ka'u CDP encompasses most of Judicial District 9 surrounding Ocean View, Waiohinu, Na'alehu, and Pahala. Reference Communication 351 introduced by Ms. David by request postponed August 15, 2017. There is a motion by Ms. David, seconded by Ms. Poindexter, to recommend passage of Bill 52 on first reading.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk. So there's a motion on the floor, but before I turn the floor over to Ms. David, I'd just like to make sure everybody has both the confidential that we received yesterday and a memo from the planning director, which would be communication 351.5. Okay, and if you don't, you can let me know. But with that, I'll move on to Ms. David.
Mahalo, Chair Eoff. And first of all, I really would like to thank the testifiers again for coming out today and expressing sentiments that only they can express from being involved in this lengthy process. And so my opening statements will be just that, a few personal observations. And I agree that Ka'u is one of the very few places left on this island which through the years has been able to maintain its unique cultural landscape, that when you visit Ka'u, you have the sense that really it's the same as when you were a kid, basically, is how I look at it. And in this day and age, I think that's a very special and unique, especially when you consider the development explosion that one of the testifiers testified to in the mid-70s and 80s in West Hawaii, that basically erased the look and feel of so many places. So fast forward 2017, we have a plan. But we have an entire district that has been given an opportunity to start with almost a clean slate. And they have told us what their vision is for Ka'u. Almost 50 years ago, government didn't have a responsible plan, nor did it acknowledge and consider its constitutional duties to determine impacts to our natural and cultural resources. We have come a long way. And so today, I just want to note for my colleagues that were not here on the last meeting, we have before a valid piece of legislation in my view that took countless hours in personal sacrifice of an entire community to let government know what their vision is for Ka'u. We have a document that gives these particular citizens of Ka'u a hope that government will now have important information with which to guide and consider in their decision making. This document also maintains and guarantees everyone's right to utilize established laws and procedures to address potential concerns and or amendments in the future. So hopefully CDPs will eventually eliminate the need for citizens like yourselves to hold government's feet to the fire through contested case hearings like the Misler case or court actions on their own dime. And I feel very strongly about that, having been one of those people prior to coming to the council. So I appreciate when our citizens have to engage in legal processes to make a point or to have government follow the law. And so 9 years, I think, is long enough for the people of Ka'u to have a say in government. And I personally want to thank everyone that testified this morning. And I wholeheartedly support your efforts. I believe in the CDPs because I think it's not whether it has a force of law in itself. I think it's a document that has to work together with established laws and processes that we already have. And if something comes up later on, this body is the one to address any future amendments. And so I'm very comfortable and I'm very supportive. And I just urge my council members to feel the same and vote accordingly. Last thing I noted for council members, I'm reading the bill itself. It says that the Ka'u CDP is, the purpose of the bill is to adopt the CDP. And it's to adopt it according to Hawaii General Plan. Also, for those that are concerned that possibly we have to have a very complete document that addresses everybody's concerns up front, it also says this document is adopted by reference, subject to later amendments by ordinances. So to me, I think this document is not meant to be perfect. I think it's a living and breathing document that just expresses the desires of an entire community. And on that, I just ask for my council members' support and their yes vote. Mahalo.
Thank you, Ms. David.
And I know there's a lot of conversation about setbacks and all that, and I understand that too. Hearing from the community is really important. In the previous meetings we've had concerning the CDP, all of your concerns actually have nothing to do with the concerns I have about the CDP. It's not the CDP, it's not the will that's in there, because I fully support that. I get it, I understand that. Mr. Cross made a comment that the intent of this is to be advisory. This intent is to express our will, but and it's stated in our documents that the ordinances cannot be changed by a CDP. It must go through a case-by-case portion, and I understand that as well. My concern is the interpretation in reference to the Missler case, and I am bothered by that, and we have some documents before us that I need further clarification. It's not that I don't support the CDP, because I absolutely support the CDP. My concern revolves around how it will be applied to our county general plan, because even though I hear from the testifiers this is meant to be advisory and this is our will, this is what we want, according to as I understand, it becomes part of the general plan once it's adopted, which triggers other unintended consequences, and that's where my concern rides. So at this point, I will, I'll relinquish.
Mr. Richards, some of your questions, would you like to engage with the planning director at this time? Because I think he's addressed some of them.
I will, I'm going to want to hear from Corp Counsel, but I think there's other people. I know Ms. Leloy has some questions, so yeah, I'll hang on, not quite yet.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Leloy.
Good morning, and thank you, Chair. I am thrilled about what the Ka'u CDP and this document brings to the table as far as addressing community needs. I stay up at night thinking about how are we going to provide housing for our families and maintain a sense of community and a sense of culture in areas that make people excited to move to. Gentrification keeps me up at night. And this is one area, Ka'u is one area that we can really begin to look at how we address the needs of the community while maintaining a rural setting. And those are the reasons I support the Ka'u CDP. But the backdrop of the Missler case and how it's being intertwined into the adoption of a general plan and the language contained within that is what I need clarification on. It has nothing to do with setbacks. It has nothing to do with preserving a rural community. That's what this document does. And I want to be sure that how we apply this, which will become law, that it maintains the integrity of our existing laws and codes, but fills the gap in the areas of the general plan that hasn't addressed those needs. That's the way I view the CDPs, is we have an overarching general plan, and the CDPs fills the gap where it was absent, or the language was absent in our general plan. That's how we maintain community. So I have a number of questions, and I'll be more than happy to take us into executive session. I've had a very long conversation with Planning Department. I completely understand. But Mr. Cross captured it all. He said it was a recommendation. But my reading is it's more than that. And so how do we strike a balance between that recommendation and the language that has the force and effect of law? So I'm going to yield at this time. I'm going to be looking forward to moving into executive session. I'll be more than happy to get this body there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Liloy.
You know, I spoke the last time that there is no doubt that I feel that this is the community's work, and we need to be there to support the community and what they've labored over this for so many years. So that's not a question. I fully support the intent of this. I fully support the community where they want to go with this. It's just that overarching question. You know, from one member of the committee just was stated that their vision of this is it is a recommending document, not a mandating document. But there are some language in there that will be mandating. So that's the overarching question for me. Are we here advocating on the fact that this document is just a recommendation, or is there recommendations with some language in there that does have the force and effect of a mandating code section? So that's my question. I'm there for the community. If they think that this is just a recommendation document, I'm there. If they think that there's language in there that does have that force and effect of shall, absolutely, you know, those sections, I'm there. But I just need to get clarity on what we feel this is and what, you know, the members think that this is. Is the language in there gonna be the force and effect of law, or is it just our interpretation of that language, the force and effect of law? I don't know. I don't know how they're gonna do that in court, how they're gonna, but that's just my question. Here to support the will and intent of the community. I just need to get clarity on what that actually means. So I'll just leave that open for now, and I'll yield.
Thank you. Ms. Poindexter.
Yeah, and I've always said I support, you know, the recommendations of the people of Ka'u through the CDP process. And I believe, and I think from the last meeting that we had, and I cannot wait to get into executive session so that we can talk about that more. But even from asking the planning director, you know, this, yes, the force and effect of law, that it mandates the commission to look at what the people's recommendations are. That's what this document does. The CDP is brought and it says, okay, here's the force and effect of law. Here's the CDP commission. Make sure, look at it, when you're deliberating on what your actions are going to be, please take this into consideration. It's not saying you will, commission, do everything that CDP does. No, it mandates the commission to say, take a look at this document on the recommendations of the people. Finally, we're at that point. You know, here we are. I'm going to be waiting for Hamakua's one. Finally, we have the people's voices mandating for everyone to pay attention to the recommendations and the wishes of each community, because we want to preserve our cultural lifestyle, our way of living, that we cannot come in and, you know, we talk about our gathering rights ruining. I've seen that. I've seen it out happening in Hamakua, what has gone on with all the cliffside failures there, with the destruction of our gathering places where the water is destroyed. I mean, I've seen it happen because we're not listening to the people of those communities. So this, the force and law of this document is pay attention. Look at what the people are saying and take this into consideration when you're taking action. That's what it is. And that's what I believe it to be. So again, that's what I believe it to be. That's my interpretation of it. So I give so much mahalo to the steering committee for representing a lot of the people's voices. And a lot of times, a lot of people don't show up, but you run into them in the supermarket, at the parks, at the gyms, and people telling you all these things. I know, I sat in some of the Hamakua CDP meetings, and a lot of people don't show, but they're out there, and all of the people on that steering committee, you get people calling you, talking to you, and not only on the steering committee, but us as people who were actively involved in that process, we get that. So we go and we, you know, one voice may represent 200, you know. So anyway, mahalo, and I'm supporting this. Aloha.
Okay. Ms. Ruggles.
I just want to say that I wholeheartedly agree with everything that has been said. And I also want to frame this just to remind us that with this specific CDP, 14% of the population was said to participate. And that's huge. That's a huge amount of people for a sample size. And that really represents a direct will of the people. And personally, I think should have the force and effect of law over others, other guidelines, because this is a direct will of the people. I mean, this is something that's been going on for 8 to 9 years. The community has been working on this. There were community summits, there were speak outs, there were focused discussions on all the contentious topics, and they worked out the fine details. And this has been gone back to the steering committee and to the planning commission, to the steering committee. I mean, our Office of Corporation Counsel looked at it. It's been very well vetted, and I am in complete support of it. Thank you.
We're all troubled by the precedent set by the Missler case and how that is going to impact us going forward with our general plan and so forth. But I do want to comment on this particular plan. It's excellent. It is the best community-based planning I have seen yet. And I totally commend everyone who participated. I know how many volunteer hours that takes. And I really want to support this. So thank you.
Okay, I would just like to say that I'm not troubled by the Missler case. I'm actually glad that there's some clarification for us. And in a plan that has policy that's should, those are should. If the policy is a shall, I believe it's a shall, and it shall be enforced. Now, there could be variances or specific situations that may come up, but in this case, I don't think we should be troubled, because we were told at the last meeting that the Ka'u CDP steering committee was very careful in how they worded this document. And I don't really want us to go into an executive session if there's things that can be clarified in sunshine here in front of the public, especially by the planning director, if this isn't a confidential document, or if there's questions council members may have to further clarify the concerns that they have. But I would like to see us do most of that in open session. If it comes to a point where Corp Council recommends we take an executive session, then, so be it. But I don't really want to leave the public in the dark either about whatever needs to be clarified here. So that's just my comment for now, and I'll go back to Ms. David.
And I just wanted to make a note, in case we go back into executive session, that planning director, Misler did not happen overnight. Misler was around for several years. And so in anticipation of a potential litigation that would have an extreme impact on CDPs, the KAU one in particular, I understand that everything that could possibly be taken into consideration to address what both Mr. Kanuha and Ms. Liloy concerns are about the Misler case has been vetted. And I'm not one to say the planning director or even our Corp Counsel, who read this document twice and said that he saw no reason why we should not move forward. Now, he's our attorney. So based on that, I really believe that we as a body, in taking into consideration the planning director's view and comments and position on this, given the Misler and also our Corporation Counsel, I really think that we are ready to move forward. And should some of the council members be uncomfortable because of questions that they may or may not have, there's a way to deal with that. I mean, I just hate to see anybody vote no, but my position is based on our attorney and the planning director. That says, given the Misler decision, this plan is okay to move forward. So that's my position. I'm ready to move forward based on good information from people that have studied this. So I yield.
Okay, thank you, Ms. David. Mr. Kanuha.
Thank you. Mr. Cross, I just want to get a clarification. And you said you were on the steering committee?
I am on the steering committee. I'm a non-voting member.
Okay.
It's because I work in the district of Ka'u, but I don't live there.
Representing a large property owner, I think you...
Yes, I used to work for Olson Trust, and I provide consulting work for Resource Land Holdings, 6,000 acres. And I currently work for Ka'u Royal Hawaiian Coffee and Tea, 1,600 acres. So I used to be vice president of real estate for C. Brewer, 31,000 acres of land under my control.
Okay, so I know you stated earlier that you thought that this was a recommending document.
I am recommending you pass this document,
Yes.
this bill.
I agree.
Okay.
I think we should pass it.
There are issues within the bill that may upset large landowners or properties within the quarter-mile setback, or changes in zoning that are recommended.
That's not my issue.
Yeah.
But I'm just where I'm trying to get is there is language in there that is legally, binding, mandating certain things. I just want to make sure and clarify that this entire document isn't just a recommendation document, sure, it's recommending a lot of things, but there is language in there that does legally bind the county to, when things come up, that we shall, based off of the community's input within this CDP, that these shall be done. I'm just,
That's not my answer to give. Miley, you just said it. Or maybe it was Valerie. When a plan or a development comes before the planning commission, they will refer to the CDP. They will refer to the general plan. They will follow the county code, and they will make recommendations to that developer or landowner on how they should proceed. The CDP is there with the community's voice as to, we would like this to happen. So the Planning Commission takes that into consideration. And if the general plan had to be changed, the CDP recommends to the general plan to make the change. And then that's you guys to make the change to the general plan. That's how I see
okay.
this.
Thank you. Can I bring up planning department? I really want to support this, but I just want to make sure that I'm completely, pono with this, with my decision on voting, and where I feel that my vote would matter. But you heard from, they're going to be making recommendations based off of what's happening in the CDP, what's happening in general plan, to the planning department, to the planning commission, and just recommendations. There is language within the CDP that is mandating, and you shall, instead of just recommend, do this, this, and this. Is that correct?
Correct. If you were to refer to the specific sections that have shall, they're going to be referring to existing, Hawaii, ordinance.
Already ordinances.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
So, to back up a little bit, I think and I'm assuming, I don't want to speak for John, that you can section the shoulds, where a lot of the community focused on was how do you craft the shoulds, and that's where the energy went into, and that's where it's the recommendation, versus the things that they felt like it was important enough to reiterate, ordinance because it was important enough. Well, I don't think that's where his focus was, and so that's why I think he tends to use the language recommendation, not thinking about the stuff that's already up at Hawaii state statute. So I think also we went back to the table after the last committee meeting, and we reviewed the document again, and we ended up starting to wordsmith parts of it, and we realized in just trying to wordsmith stuff, we were going to maybe have to kick it back to steering committee, and it wasn't worth it, because if down the road we need to amend, we can do that down the road. It wasn't enough to feel like we wanted to postpone again and send it back to steering. So we went through it again to just ensure there was nothing being said that put us at risk of trying for something to be ordinance that we didn't intend to. And I think we've gone through it again. If you read Corp Council's comments, clearly it's the shall and shoulds that gets us into sticky points. And we went through it again to just ensure that's not the case.
If that's the case, this was a document that has been worked on for 10 years. This is what the community wants. Why isn't it mandating language? I know there's issues with the shalls and shoulds and all that stuff. But if the community wants this, they've worked so hard. I just feel that shall be the wishes of the community. And you know what I mean? I know we get into legal issues, but I just hate to see us pass something, and then it goes through the process, and it's just recommendations, and then You know, a developer says, it's just recommendations. I'm the property owner. I have rights too. I want to do this. Sure, it's just a community plan that isn't mandatory. I wanna do this that's against that recommendation or against that thing. So that's why I'm like, I mean, not against the recommendation, but like it's not a binding thing.
I did ask the question, why don't we just make it a shall? And a lot of the and I'm talking specifically around the quarter-mile setback. In the end, it was a community compromise. I wasn't here for that discussion, but clearly it was articulated. It was the compromise that was reached at the steering committee level. So that's the simple answer to that. I want to respect what they worked out.
Okay. I'm gonna yield.
I know these guys too long. So I know exactly where all of this is going. My concern is about some of the backdrop, and I got a copy of the executive minutes that I was not in attendance, and there was a number of questions I personally would have asked of our corporation counsel that this council didn't ask, and I just want that opportunity. And so I hear what my colleagues are saying, but there's a moment of clarity that I need that I have not gotten yet. And I want to be able to ask about the existing writ that's still pending, the backdrop of the ICA, what they decided, and even down at Third Circuit Court. And there was a lot of conversation down there on how it dealt with our public trust. And I am a huge supporter of protecting our public resources, which is why I am so excited about the KAU CDP. I really believe that that was actually what drove the CDP, was the protection of our public resources and how we manage that going forward. So I can appreciate what the KAU CDP is bringing to the table, but what's bothering me is my colleagues didn't ask the questions that I would have. And they're sitting here saying, I'm comfortable, I'm comfortable, I'm comfortable. I'm saying I'm not. And I really want to take this into executive session so I can go get comfortable and bring clarity. And we can come out of this and have a decision. So I yield at this time.
I just wanted to have as much discussion in public as we could, but if there's something that we cannot talk about in open session, then we can always have that motion. Ms. David?
I think we have Mr. Matsukawa, who is the attorney on the Misler case. I mean, he's sitting there. I'm just wondering if my colleagues have any questions for the attorney that was very involved in Misler. If we have any questions for him before we take this into executive session to get some clarity so that's my suggestion. He's sitting there, and I'm not sure as far as what possible questions we can ask him. That doesn't require us to go into executive session for clarity purposes, and for the people that are here, that's not privileged and confidential.
Point of order.
Yeah.
Thank you, and I agree. If there's a question that needs to be asked, I think just ask them. If it's Madam Chair, if there's a question that needs to be asked, ask the question. If it's deemed that it needs to be answered in executive session, then that's yeah.
Yep, I agree with that. Did you want to call him at this time?
If they would like to entertain questions from Mr. Matsukawa, Mr. Richards, I'm not sure if you want to do that.
Chair, just a point of order. Mr. Matsukawa is part of that ongoing writ that we have with our county. So I am getting very concerned about where we're going with this and how we ask Mr. Matsukawa any questions, because we have a pending writ of, and I'm going to say it wrong, certiorari, I hope I said it right, with Mr. Matsukawa and the clients So I'm just going to caution my colleagues about where we go with this, and that's why I want to get into executive session.
Okay, I mean, that's totally up to this body who wants to go into executive session. I just made the offer because I know Mr. Muskow is not going to discuss things that are confidential, you know, with respect to the writ, but I'm just saying that if you had questions regarding what the decision came to as far as public trust resources, that we can discuss outside. Other than that, I yield. Let's go into executive session.
Well, there's not a motion yet for that, so I'll go
I'll
to.
move to go into executive session.
Yeah.
I want to discuss this document that we have, and it says confidential, so that I think that implores that it must go into executive session. And again, I want people testifying understand, this has nothing to do with the content of the CDP. That's not what we're discussing. Yeah, but we got to.
Okay, so Mr.
Procedure.
Richards has made a motion to
Second.
move into executive session for the purpose of consulting with our attorney. Ms. Leloy seconded it. Okay, I'll go ahead and ask. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I guess that would be 7 ayes. And Mr. Chung is out.